Warning: this podcast features adult subject matter, adult language, and things not meant for children to hear. Viewer discretion is advised. You've been warned. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first episode of I'm No Joe, the show where every armchair quarterback can feel like an Eddie Bravo. I'm here joined today by three gentlemen a little savvy in the ways of the MMA themselves. I'll give everybody a chance here. We will start off with the one and only Nicholas Devine.
What's up, everybody? You can find me on n.divine83, Instagram and YouTube. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming along. Next in the hot seat, we have Richard Head, a.k.a. GolfTeeVapes himself.
I'm GolfTeeVapes. You can catch me on Wednesday nights on the YouTubes and on Instagram, all GolfTeeVapes.
Next in the row of killers here, we have the one and only Swaggy Shane himself.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
You can find me anywhere at Vaping Swag or Swaggy Shane. Pretty much any social media outlet is covered. So hope to have fun today.
Awesome. Thank you all, gentlemen, for coming. I do appreciate this. So without too much fiddle-faddle, let's dive right into it. The first thing I would like to get the panel's opinion on is this last weekend, the UFC Singapore card. The main event, Donald Cerrone, my man Cowboy, versus Leon Edwards. Cowboy gets cut in the first round. Real good. Bleeds for 23 to 24 of the 25 minutes the fight goes on. Never shows signs of really getting wobbled. Never gets rocked too hard. Holds pretty much, essentially, most will say, punch for punch, kick for kick, through to the judge's decision. And then Leon Edwards has the stones to talk trash and try and make a call out in his Octagon interview. I don't get that. I think that's a bit much. What do you guys feel about that?
I know one of the things is it's very easy to say stupid shit when you're got your adrenaline pumping. So
Very true.
If you're a relatively newcomer to the scene, adrenaline often will make you say things that you regret later. I mean, that's one big thing. Not necessarily an excuse, but that is definitely something to keep in mind.
Very true. I can see that as well.
Yeah, I think that that's them guys' moments, and that it's probably all pre-rehearsed before they even get out there. So I think no matter how they win, that's their moment, and they take it however they want to, however they rehearsed it, really. They know what they're saying before they go there.
So you're saying he's using like a saying or a speech that he had ready, hoping that he won.
Yeah.
Okay. That's an interesting thing. I can see that as well.
On the other side of that, how are you going to talk trash and call someone out when there's plenty of people who have put Cerrone away? You can't go off on a high horse when you can't put a man away that's been put away before by other fighters that are better than yourself.
See, and I agree with you there. Go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, when you're Cerrone is a journeyman fighter, really. I mean, what is he, like 40-20 or something? I mean,
33-10-0. I'm looking at his record. 33-10-0 with one no contest. So essentially 45 pro fights.
Yeah. I mean, when you're fighting a journeyman, that's hey, we're giving you somebody who, still has some teeth, but he's been around, and it's can go one of two ways. When you're fighting a journeyman fighter, he might be on his game specifically that time, or he's just getting old and ready to retire kind of thing. So Cerrone is just one of those.
See, that's kind of the
fighters.
way I feel. I feel real similar to that in that, if you look just back at his last couple fights, you look at Cerrone versus Rick Story. He picked Rick Story apart like they were fighting in the Matrix and he was Neo. There was nothing that Story could do that came anywhere near him. He countered everything, and you watched him like a cat toying with a mouse, just set him up until kapow, that one just dropped him and ended him. But then you turn around and you see what Darren Till did to him. So, like TJ's saying, it's not like he's never been stopped. We just saw him get stopped in his last outing. So I think with Edwards coming out and just really mediocrely towing the line for 25 minutes, I think I may be inclined to agree with what Nick's saying there. I think that might have been like a little bit of a pre-rehearsed thing, because if that's what you come up with on the spot after a performance like that against somebody like Cerrone, who could have gone either way, I really think you're either just trying to bark loud enough to get somebody to pay attention, or you're just spieling some stuff that you already had written down, hoping that it went this way.
Yeah. I think it's Cowboy's a big name to him. It's a big name to a lot of people. As much as Cowboy's kind of on that kind of fence of winning, losing, winning, losing.
Right.
Losing to winning. He's still a name. Still a name. So, yeah. You got to think what he's thinking before that. Like, if I beat Cowboy, this is what I'm going to say. How I'm going to beat him, but yeah.
I agree. I think it's a very good point, sir. So, moving right along to the next event that we have upcoming. This coming Friday, July 6th, the Tough 27 finale. We have got Joe Manganiello. It's not Manganiello. It's Gigliotti or some crazy shit like that versus Mike. It's going to be a good showdown for the actual Ultimate Fighter undefeated season finals. But the card itself, the highlight of the card itself, Brad Tavares versus Israel Adesanya, the last style bender, coming in at a perfect 13-0 record. Now, I think stylistically that's going to be a beautiful matchup, with the exception of one thing that I've been reading a lot of in the last 2 days, and that's that Israel Adesanya might be hurt. There's rumors that he might have some torn muscle around his ribs on his left side. I think that might realistically change the entire platform of the card, because it's not like it's something that I just saw on a Facebook wall or something on a chat board somewhere like this. There's several Share Dogs running it. MMA Fighting was running it. Like the reputable sports fighting journalism is starting to catch wind. What do you guys think? Do you think that's really going to affect the whole card? Or do you think that's really going to just tweak that grand finale that they're putting on the end of that night?
It possibly could. However, if you look at it this way, how many fighters go into a fight completely unscathed? They always have some sort of injury. It comes with training. That's how it works. Anybody who's trained knows this. You're going to get injured, whether it's something minor or something a little more severe, like a torn muscle. You're still going to go in there. You're going to perform to the top of your capability of what's there. Now, does that leave an opening for guy across the octagon to come in and take heed and notice to what's wrong with you and beat up that certain area? Yeah, that just means you're going to defend it a little smarter. You might change your game plan a little bit, but I don't think it's going to throw that big of a wrench in the grand scheme of the fight.
I could see that. I could see that as well.
Yeah, I agree totally with TJ. Been there, done that, know how it is to go in injured, I know back in the day, we used to go to bingo halls and campgrounds, in the days when, Time Warner Cable banned the UFC because it was too graphic. Back in those days when MMA was just starting and you had some really shady promoters, there were a lot of people that just, weren't in shape. You saw it very often. And even still through this, with the high intensity of training that most people do, up until, a week before the fight, then, and especially in the tough, that's an insane amount of you're just working. That's all you're doing is working and fighting and, pushing yourself to the limit each and every day to make yourself look good. So I would venture to say that 9 out of 10 people have something wrong with them when they finally go to the finale.
Yeah, what's the tough finale on? Is that FS1?
I believe it's going to be on FS1. Let me
Yeah.
double check here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
FS1. FS1
yeah,
tomorrow night.
that's definitely that was an awesome. I mean, it still is. It's an awesome fight on there. I like the tough finales, but I think they should stay on, not pay-per-view.
Right,
Yeah.
I agree. That's one of the reasons I'm excited for it, because you've got the big 226, which we're obviously going to have to get to in just a minute, on Saturday night that everybody is gearing up for. But I like that they keep the finale for tough on Friday night. So even though there's, Adesanya versus Tavares is a pretty good name fight, they're going to keep that as the headline. So there's still something to draw you in, even if you're not paying attention to the actual season of tough. You still got a nice big name to keep people drawn in. But then at the same time, you get the 4 guys from the 2 weight classes that have been grinding it out. And especially with this season, this was Ultimate Fighter undefeated. So everyone coming in this season was coming in with a perfect record. So whoever leaves with this win has made it all the way to the UFC and had their, initial rise choreographed or videotaped according to the way it played out to show their perfection, reaching the, quote unquote pinnacle of getting that UFC contract. And I think that's going to be a nice little spruce as well.
Yeah. Finish with an undefeated guy. That's awesome.
Yeah, and on camera for the world to watch you do that as well. I think that's going to be a nice little feather in somebody's cap.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it.
So the next thing.
Yeah.
So one more thing I want to talk about real quick about the tough finale on Friday night before we move on to the big Saturday night topic here. Alex Caceres, Bruce Leroy as they call him, is on the card. That's the co-main event. He is fighting at 13-11. Now, I'm not saying you've got to have a great record to be in the UFC, but when you take into consideration that the last half dozen or so bigger name fighters that have been released by the UFC have all been very open about being released because they had lost a certain amount of fights in a row, or their record had gone to a negative status finally from losing a couple fights, and the UFC just felt that they weren't carrying their weight enough. Now, how do you do a guy who's not even really a household name, and you keep him fighting at 13-11, and then let him co-main event against a guy who's not even ranked? I mean,
to be honest, I don't know why he's still in the UFC. I know he had a hype train when he first came in.
Yeah.
But I think part of that is because of his attitude. He had the right attitude to draw numbers, but unfortunately his performances don't show that. So why he's on there, I don't know, other than the fact that the UFC has a huge stable of fighters, and maybe that was the only one they could find that was going to take that fight on whatever notice.
I could definitely see that being an option as well. It's just, that's one of those things that strikes me as odd when you hear about, big name guys getting cut every couple months because they've lost, 3 in a row, and their quote unquote contract clause said, and then you hear about a guy like, Bruce Leroy. He's 13-11, so he's great at getting his ass kicked. But I don't see how that balances out. I think the UFC I think that's one of those things that it's kind of fallen into the cracks through the transition.
Yeah.
One of the things I'll have to say is the UFC tends to hold on to somebody who actually fights, I think that's the case here. I think it's a little bit more, not necessarily his record, but he's pretty tenacious overall.
Yeah, I'll absolutely agree with that.
He'll put on a good fight generally anytime he steps in the ring, win or lose. So, I mean, compare him to Anderson Silva, for instance. Which would you rather see? You know what I'm saying?
Right. I can see that.
I mean, I would say that that's the biggest thing is he may not be a household name, but he'll put up a good fight regardless if he wins or loses.
Very true. Very true. I can see that. Okay. Flip my page here real quick. Okay, so the big thing that everyone has been waiting all summer to see, the thing that everyone who's following the UFC has been looking forward to since they announced it was official and it wasn't just a hoax on Instagram, UFC 226, July 7th. So there's a lot to run down on this card, so I just want to start at the base of the main card here. So the first thing I want to get you guys' opinion on, because this is one of those things that it kind of made me scratch my head when I read it. Gokhan Saki versus Khalil Roundtree Jr. Now, Khalil Roundtree Jr., I have been rooting for that dude like downtroddenly since he was on Ultimate Fighter 23, because he was one of those guys from Team Joanna that just looked solid all the way through. He fought good. He trained good. He always had a good attitude. And he didn't quite make it. He fell a little bit short. And the UFC has thrown him on a couple of cards in a row trying to give him that chance because he's a likable guy. He's in great shape. He's got a good attitude. He always comes out and performs. But it seems like for whatever reason, he just can't quite catch traction. And it feels to me kind of like they're giving him like we were talking about earlier, they're throwing him a Cerrone and putting him against Gokhan Saki, because while Gokhan Saki's still relatively new-ish to UFC, that dude has been around. That dude is a warrior from the primal days of mixed martial arts really taking hold. And I want to get you guys' thoughts on, do you feel like, at least to me, it seems like they're throwing him the Cerrone here. They're giving him that either you're going to make your name off this guy or he's going to take you off the roster and we're going to focus on him more kind of situation.
Anytime you have a kickboxer from the Netherlands, it's a wild card. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, Saki is not a chump by any means. You know,
right.
He may have, what is he, 1-1 in the UFC? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, 1-1 since he joined the UFC.
But that shows absolutely nothing, because that dude will knock your head off in a second, you know? So it's not like he's a chump. I think it's going to be a really good match overall, because it's going to, like you said, it's going to determine who they're going to focus on. The winner of this is going to, you know, obviously be the center of attention for some time. So.
Right, and with it opening the card, the actual main card, being the first fight on the main card, I feel like they're kind of focusing the spotlight just a little bit, like, you know, guys, somebody's going to get a little more attention from this fight. Who's it going to be? And I agree, stylistically, it looks to be interesting.
Oh. When you're saying throwing somebody as Cerrone, I look at that and I can't say that it's throwing a Cerrone, because obviously, how long has Saki been around? He's also done some different things, whereas Cerrone is basically mainlined the UFC. He hasn't fought outside of it, whereas Saki's been all over. So, yes, it is throwing a Cerrone to a point. However, for Roundtree to pull himself in there, he's going to have to perform and actually do something with that, because yes, you're fighting a very savvy veteran, but if you want to continue the route that you're on and not get thrown to the wayside, you have to finish him. A win by decision is not going to do it.
That's true. I didn't even really think about that, but now that you mention it, I agree. In this situation, especially with it being the opening of the main card, I agree with you. I don't think a decision is really going to cut it here. Now that you mention it, I think this really that really does seem to click pretty well, that really both of these fighters have the potential to finish anybody in the first, you know, maybe early second round. And I think that might be what they're going for here. Kind of it's blood sport, gentlemen. Let's see some battle.
Yeah, I agree. I think when I seen Cub Swanson a couple months ago getting getting his contract redone, they brought up that word gatekeeper. And I always thought of Donald Cerrone as that. Saki I'm not too familiar with, but that's kind of what it sounds like. And I think that's absolutely a thing, the gatekeeper. Like, if you go on, you pass this guy, he's got a good name, been in for a while. If you could beat him, then you could get up here. If not, then, it's not looking too good because, he's the gatekeeper.
Very true. Very true. And yeah, and I could see that as well, because in a sense that kind of plays both ways, because on the Roundtree side, like he's been that slow to start but still there, like prelims guy. On the other hand, Saki is just really making his transition into the UFC. So he's got a good following of his own, just not the UFC world fans. It's those Dutch kickboxing fans that know Saki. So I can see that kind of being the chance to, break the gatekeeper on either side, the new name for the UFC on one side, and then that steady grinder on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Nick Saki has been a Dutch kickboxer. He was in K1 from about 2006 up until he started in the UFC. So,
wow.
Yeah. Saki had about a decade-long run in K1, just knocking people's heads into bleachers.
Wow.
Okay, so the next card the next fight, we'll move right along, is Michael Chiesa versus Anthony Pettis. Showtime making his grab back at the spotlight. Now, this one, I kind of feel like, and I know I'm going to catch flack for this from some people, but I feel like this is the excusists battle. And what I mean by that is that no matter who loses, if it's Chiesa, he's always got that, well, Connor threw the fucking dolly at the bus and broke the window and cut my face up. That's why I couldn't train right excuse. And on the other side of that coin, for Pettis, if he gets his ass kicked, he's got twofold there. One, I've been helping Duke Rufus try and train CM Punk for the last 2 years, and you see how that went, but we tried. And then on the other side, when I wasn't helping Rufus train CM Punk, I was helping him train my little brother, Sergio, who is quickly taken the UFC by storm. So it's like, I feel like either one of these guys have more excuses to lose than they have reasons to try and win.
I don't know that I don't think they'll play the excuse game, to be honest. I mean, regardless of what they're doing or what's happened, whether it's the Dolly incident with Chiesa or Pettis trying to train CM Punk or Phil, because I refuse to acknowledge that he's CM Punk. You come into
Likewise.
the UFC, you drop your fucking wrestling moniker, period.
I agree. Phil Brooks should have been what was announced.
Yeah. But either way, both of them, they have not been looking good as of late. So both of them need to show up, put their excuses aside, whatever the hell they may be. If either one of them pulls an excuse after the fight other than saying, yeah, he got me, to hell with the both of you. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big Pettis fan. Pettis, he's a Wisconsin boy like myself, so I've always had a soft spot for him, not to mention he's got one of the greatest highlights of all time, jumping off a fence and
fucking catching Benson right across the face.
Yeah, big old roundhouse off the fence. Greatest thing I've ever seen. Love it. But to be honest, I think he's getting towards the end of his career, unless all of a sudden he can pull some shit out of his ass and string a couple of wins together. He might have to hang it up soon, as well as Chiesa, because Chiesa looked like he was going up, and then he took a dive off as well.
I agree completely, and especially, and if you're talking about Chiesa here, like Chiesa came in with bad hype when his intro into the UFC, he got that submission by tapping that he's never going to live down because he gave that girly scream, and the ref called it as a verbal submission tap, and that's just kind of like haunted him like a bad shadow ever since. And then with Pettis, he's got that highlight reel off the cage fucking spinning kick that put Benson Henderson on his face that no one will ever be able to forget that either. But like you said, he's definitely on a downward streak here lately. And I agree. He really does seem to be rounding towards that tail end where he's either going to have to make a run for that belt to hold it, or he's going to have to hang it up and just be good with coaching.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Like, this is a very pivotal match for both of these guys. Like, if they go in it half-assed and give a half-ass performance, go to a decision. That's the way that I see this going. They may as well just, hang it up if that's the performance that they're going to give, and that's really that's the least forward that I'm looking to a match is, I really don't see anything good coming from that, honestly.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody's saying. I think Chiesa has to win it more than Pettis does because Pettis has that highlight reel, and Chiesa is just that guy that got hit with the glass from if he loses, he's just the guy that got hit by McGregor with the glass from the dolly.
I agree. I think we're all pretty much in unison on this one here.
Yeah.
So next one, we'll move right along. This one, I can't really believe that they actually made it happen, but they're going to make it happen. Francis the Nightmare Ngannou versus Derek the Black Beast Lewis. Now, if you have ever seen any of the fights from either one of these gentlemen, you know that both of them carry mail trucks for a hand and will just tank your skull into sleepy time. Most famously, Ngannou for putting Overeem's forehead to the back of his shoulders in that astral projection of a one-punch knockout. Lewis has a half a dozen of those. The problem is none of them are really against bigger name guys. So on one hand, you've got an amazing up-and-coming real terror in the heavyweight division that has huge hands, but like Stipe showed, just doesn't have that wrestling defense and just doesn't have that gas tank for a championship round yet. He's also less than 5 years total into his career. But then on the other side of the octagon from him, you have Derek Lewis, who has been a quote-unquote athlete of the highest level for well over a decade now, but still, fight after fight, shows trouble weathering the longer rounds and holding that great energy that he starts with. I almost feel like this might be a real similar to the Saki Roundtree situation where one of these gentlemen is going to get a lot more attention and the other one's kind of just going to slowly fade away because Derek Lewis has been down with an injury for a while now. So this is really kind of him making his climb back up attempt. But at the same time, Ngannou's brand new, and he's still climbing up too. So it feels like this is kind of almost a match to set the marching order for the new wave of the heavyweight division, in my opinion. What do you guys think?
I'll take it. I immediately comes to mind if this thing gets out of the first round, and I say if because the way those two throw bombs, somebody's getting knocked out. Absolutely. It's just a matter of who. If it gets outside of the first round, I have this just terrible gut feeling that it's going to remind me of the Kimbo Slice Dada 5000 fight.
Yes. Very
to be
much,
honest,
yes.
Because the gas tank on the both of those fighters is miserable. They need some cardio. Bad. Yes. You be as fat as you want, but have cardio so that way you can go. Jesus, pull a Roy Nelson, at least be able to go 5 rounds.
I very much agree, and I like you. That is exactly one of the things that flow to my mind right away is that same Kimbo versus Dada historical match that if you go back and watch it now, granted, I'm not saying their technique is spectacular. I'm not saying model your career after that fight. But what I'm saying is if you go back and you watch that, in round 1, those two gentlemen were trying to take each other's skulls out of the skin of their face by beating mercilessly. And now, not a lot of it landed, but those dudes threw for the fence with every swing. So I definitely agree with that potential.
Yeah, that's a fan-friendly fight for sure. That's a real fun one on there. And I think Big B said that he said, if we make it out of the second round, he probably doesn't deserve to fight for the UFC anymore. And that's probably just what's going to happen. If not, maybe we see them go into the third, both tired as hell. I think either way, it's going to be a good fight. I don't think they're making it out of the first, though.
I agree.
Yep, I totally agree. It's going to be a first-round slobberknocker, man. It's going to be probably some of the most heavy-hitting heavyweights that we've seen in quite some time because Ngannou, man, that guy is a beast. I mean, they're both beasts. I mean,
Yeah.
they're just going to be trying to knock each other's head off. That's all we're going to see. You know, it's simple as that.
And to that point, that's one of the reasons as well that personally I'm really interested in this fight, because while we all know that these two dudes are going to be trying to take the skull of their opponent off by force, at the same time, that's where Derek Lewis has that little extra bonus card in his back pocket, or a trick up his sleeve, if you will. He's got a collegiate wrestling background. The dude can wrestle. We've already seen in that Stipe fight, Francis can't wrestle for shit. He can't stop a takedown. He can't get you off of him once you put him on his back. I kind of feel like Derek Lewis in this fight, at least, is almost like a shorter gas tanked Stipe versus the Francis, whereas they both have that knockout power, but Lewis does still have that wrestling card up his sleeve to play with if he wants to, and we've seen that work against Francis before.
That's interesting. I didn't know he was a collegiate wrestler. Yeah, that would be funny if he came out with a double leg.
That's what I'm thinking, is that we saw Stipe when he grabbed Francis and pushed him backwards. You saw Francis's eyes open up like, oh shit, what the hell is this? Nobody does that to me. And once they got him on his back, he had real problems. So with Derek Lewis having wrestling ability, he might actually have an advantage if he can weather the storm and hold that gas tank out.
Gas tank's a big thing. It's hard to get a double leg when you're gasping for breath.
Very, very true. Okay, so moving right along here, the co-main event, one of, not only on paper, but from at least a fan from my point of view's perspective, one of the most exciting fights, not only this year, but maybe in the last couple years. Realistically, for me, this matchup just is really setting the bar for what I like to see from professional fighters. And that's Max Bless Holloway versus Brian T. City Ortega. These two gentlemen, both amazing jiu-jitsu players, both great wrestlers, both smooth grapplers, both unorthodox strikers with no quit and gas tank for days. Both of these dudes can go an hour if they had to. And when you look at them on paper, the only loss Holloway has in the UFC is in his early day versus Conor McGregor, who was in the middle of his tear up the division. And across from him, you've got the only man in history to knock Frankie Edgar out. That is like top of the steps, Rocky, throw your hands up, da-da-da. That's a moment. Like, that's a minute you have to realize and appreciate. But that's not to take anything away from Holloway, who now has twice just artistically dismantled Jose Aldo, who most will say was, aside from McGregor, one of the best the division has seen since its inception. And then you look at the possibility of those two styles going against each other. I honestly can't pick a winner. I can't. What do you guys think?
Yeah, this one's very hard to pick a winner. There's like both the top fights are very hard, I think. Man, yeah, I mean, I would just go with Holloway because of experience, I guess. But it does seem like, whatchamacallit, T City's just too cool in there. He's just so calm. Yeah, this is an awesome fight. It's very close with the McGregor Aldo fight. Whether it's, I don't know if it's a better fight like they're claiming, just because McGregor's such a big name.
Right.
Man, this fight is all. I think it's a better fight, but it's not going to be a bigger fight. It's not going to be a more money-making fight, I don't think. But actually, I'm almost positive it won't be. Right. But man, it's a better fight. I'd rather watch this one.
I agree. I'm very excited to see how it plays out either way.
When it comes to this fight, there's two sides of the coin that I look at here. Um, One is I'm going to start on the non-champion side. T-City. He has the nastiest guillotine of anybody in the UFC that I can name in God knows how long. If he gets his arms anywhere near you, he's going to get that guillotine. And yes, I understand Holloway has a fantastic jiu-jitsu background as well. However, he's not on that same level. T-City for that is he's levels above. I mean, look at the fight where he released a guillotine to go back in and do it again just to get a better grip on it. And
Very
still
true. Very true. And that was a beautiful move when he did it too.
So on that side of the house, I think he's going to have a step up. Now, the other side of the coin here, when you're looking over at Holloway starts quickly. And as you notice, he continues to push the pace faster and faster and faster and faster as the rounds go on. Absolutely. Yes, both of them have gas tanks, but if he's going to force T-City onto the bike the whole time to just try to keep pace with him, I don't know that T-City is going to be able to hang in there pace-wise. So to know who's going to win the fight, I don't know, because it's really a coin toss on this one. Either way, it's going to be fantastic, but if Holloway wins, it's probably going to be, I'm going to guess, decision. If Ortega's going to take the win, he's going to have to get a guillotine.
Interesting. Very interesting. I agree with a lot of what you say there. I can definitely see where you're coming from, though. But very interesting point of view, sir.
I'm going to have to go with DJ on this one, too. Just simply because, Ortega has rolled with all of the Gracies. Henzo, he's like massacred Henzo. That in and of itself is
right, and they all talk about that themselves as well.
Right. Holloway. Once again, Holloway's not a chump. You get those little guys, man. They can go for days and days and days. I don't think that his jiu-jitsu game is up to Ortega's jiu-jitsu game, and I think that's what's going to be the determining factor. These little guys don't have any kind of power, so it's not really going to come down to any kind of a knockout. So I think whoever is more prominent on the ground is going to take this one. It's going to be a great fight. Especially two firecrackers like these guys,
Well, and you also have to remember that the last time we saw Ortega, he put Frankie the Answer Edgar to sleep for the first time in his career, and he did it beautifully with a smooth step-off drop.
Right.
So the skill and the ability to just throw those precise crackers is definitely there on Ortega's side. Now, that's not to say Holloway doesn't have good hands, but we have seen Ortega just dance in and out of good defenses and still put the hurt in there.
Yeah, I would imagine that. I always thought that maybe Holloway's striking was better. Actually, I thought, I definitely thought Holloway's striking was better because the way that people sell Ortega as just kind of learning the striking. It's just one of them things like, while you're doing jiu-jitsu, I'm doing striking, and it just seems like that's why he would win by points on a decision, and Ortega would win by a submission, which I totally agree with if that's how it goes. I think if it goes to points, I think Holloway would get that.
So to that point, that's actually one of the reasons that I say this fight's hard to call, because like you said, Ortega, in your opinion, is just learning to strike. Reality, if you go back and watch the Road to the Octagon where he fought Edgar, they show basically his upbringing and his backstory. When he was a teenager running with the gangs and shit, the thing that got him off the street and put him onto the straight and narrow was going into a boxing gym. And the coach told him, and I quote, "I will train you and I will make you the best in the world and I won't charge you a penny, but you have to leave your life behind you." Because he knew what he was into and he knew what was going on. He wasn't stupid. Well, Ortega did it. He gave up the gang life. He gave up the drugs. He gave up the fighting, the bullshit. he became a disciplined boxer before he started into jiu-jitsu. That's his background, ironically. But not a lot of people know that.
Yeah. That's man, if Ortega wins this, he's gonna fucking skyrocket.
I agree with that completely.
I think Ortega's already skyrocketed. That's the thing. His stock is already way up there. He's blown through people that they put in front of him. And even the ones where he's had a difficult time, he manages to find a way to win. And he's been finishing people. He hasn't just been winning. He's been finishing people. There's not a lot at that weight class that you see consistently finish people. A lot of those go to decisions because, like Shane said, it's not a whole lot of power behind those guys. But when you consistently finish someone, your stock goes way up. That's why McGregor's went up so fast. He was finishing people. The same
Very
concept
true.
here with T-City. He finishes this fight. That next fight, it might be a McGregor versus T-City and not what they want to do now.
That's very true. I can definitely agree with that, and especially with the Dana White already saying that he's gonna make Khabib Conor happen. There's too much press behind it with the whole bus incident, with all the trash talking back and forth. Even before that, everybody knows that's the fight that people want to see, and then especially since I don't even want to describe it with an adjective, but the stripping of the belt from Conor and then giving it essentially on a platter to Khabib with that last-minute Al Iaquinta fight, which I love Al, and he put up a hell of a fight for what he stepped into on such short notice. Just unbelievably, astounding respect for that man and what he did and what he tried to do. But with the hype that McGregor still has, and then at the same time, like you're saying, the steam that Ortega has behind him rolling up to this, I can definitely see if he puts Holloway down, especially with a nice guillotine, just slides it in and just ends it smooth, I can definitely see them possibly bumping that Khabib fight and putting T-City versus McGregor possibly in the ring early next year, end of this year.
Or T-City versus Khabib, yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly. Or Khabib versus T-City waiting for McGregor. That's very true. All right, well, that brings us to the steak and potatoes, the real chutzpah of this card that everyone's been waiting for. Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier. Now, I will give him this. DC in Strikeforce was something to be fucked with. Him throwing Josh Barnett upside down onto his head is a highlight reel that I will not take away from him, despite how much I disdain that man. Also, having watched him coach on this season of Ultimate Fighter, I will acknowledge I like him much, much better as a coach than I do as a fighter. You didn't see him cry as a coach. That helps. But that aside, you look across the octagon and you see literally the baddest heavyweight the UFC has ever seen. He's defended the belt longer. He's on a longer streak. He's beaten the biggest of names to get and hold that belt. I don't think DC, even ballooning up past where he normally runs, has what it takes anymore compared to his Strikeforce days to get Stipe in the L column and take that belt. What do you guys think?
Man, I think it's tough, man. I love Stipe. I really do. I do actually like DC too. Man, I really like Stipe, but I think it's a tough fight. I actually think John Jones is an easier fight for Stipe than DC is. I don't know, man. DC he really uses his size well. It's just it's weird. But it's always been like that head leaning thing that John Jones took advantage of with the head kick, and then he shows that he still does that. That seems like such a crutch for DC. And
I agree.
Yeah, so weird that it's just I don't know. I guess it's just something he can't work on. But man, it is really obvious.
Well, and exactly to your point, on the road to the octagon for this week for DC versus Stipe, Dan Henry was actually pointing that exact thing out. Stipe's strongest power punches, going all the way back, aren't big, long punches like John Jones used to throw. They're short and mid 90-degree elbow, perfect power shots right in the region where DC still dips his damn head.
Yeah, and Stipe, man, you know what I like about Stipe is like you could tell he fights with instinct. Like he almost obviously he's not scared of anybody he's fighting, but he almost looked on alert, like scared, like when he was fighting in Ngannou. Like you could tell he was fighting with instinct. And that's what I really like about him, where DC looks like he's thinking. He's always thinking in there, and it's not quite as much instinct. But
I can see that.
Yeah.
You know, I hate to play devil's advocate here on this one, because I love Stipe. I truly love Stipe. But this one, I might catch a little flack from you on this, and I'm okay with this. Look back to that Josh Barnett fight. He was not supposed to win. He was not even supposed to get to that round. That was for the Grand Prix championship. Guess what? He wasn't even supposed to get in there. He stepped in there on short notice.
True.
And threw that whole world on its head. He still has the capability to do that. To be honest, I think everybody thinks that Stipe's got this in the bag. And to be honest, I like Stipe enough to where I hope he does. Because to be honest, I like DC, but I don't like his attitude. He's always making excuses. So do I want to see him lose and come up with some new excuse? Yeah, please. But on the other side of that, I think he can flip this on its head, because you know what? He's done it before, so he knows how to come out of these situations like this on top. The one he hasn't figured out is how to do that with John Jones, which there's a good reason for that. I'm just saying, go.
Like I said, I will not deny him those Strikeforce highlights, least of all that Barnett, because that, and even Josh Barnett still to this day says that is the only time he has ever been put upside down like that. He never let another man do that to him, and that motivated him to get better. But on the same token there, that was over a decade ago. And that DC, while he was heavy, he was in fucking spectacular shape. And that is not the same dad bod DC that we are looking at today. While I acknowledge he did have that potential back in the day and showed it, I don't know if he still has what it takes to get a big man like Stipe up and around.
Well, see, where you're coming from, that's the same thing everyone else thought, was we don't think he's going to be able to pull it off. That's why I'm playing devil's advocate here and saying, really do think he can do it. It's just a matter of how has he trained for this one versus his past fights, because some of his past fights have looked terrible. And to be honest, if he puts his mind to it, yeah, he can pull it off. That heavyweight Grand Prix, that wasn't a fluke. I mean, it was a fluke that he got in, but those next fights after that, he knew they were coming, so he had time to train for them properly. You're going into a super fight, you better give 300% for him. It's probably going to need to be like 600, but that's because, well, to be honest, he's a great fighter, but he's also getting towards that tail end of his career.
Right, and that's exactly what I'm referring back to, is that, you know, I acknowledge that he definitely had some highlight reel moments that I won't deny him, even though I don't like him, and I don't like him. But
either way you cut it, it's gonna be a phenomenal fight. And yeah. It doesn't matter who wins. I'm gonna be thoroughly enjoying the entirety of it from beginning to finish.
Yeah, no, I definitely won't say that it's going to be an easy fight for Stipe. I won't go to that extreme. It's definitely going to be a battle, no matter which one of them actually wins. But I personally can't sign on to that DC train for this one, man. John's belt holder doesn't have what it takes to upset Stipe.
Yeah, who do you think's going to come in heavier? I mean, here's the thing: is people say that really Daniel Cormier is going to come in heavier, like that. People have it kind of confused. But the thing is if Daniel Cormier comes in heavier, he's heavier wide ways, not like kind of broad ways, like broad shoulder ways.
Right. And that's a good point. And that's one of the things that they've been talking about this week is that Stipe comes in at 6'4", Cormier comes in at 5'10 and a half. So even if they step on the scale at the same weight, Stipe is always going to be the physically bigger man. But in terms of where they actually step in my opinion, based on looking at what DC is capable of now in my eyes versus what he used to in terms of, the 205 division, also seeing those super dad bod pictures of him out of competition where he looks like Carl Winslow. But at the same time, you've seen Stipe, he does double duty at a firehouse. He never gets a chance to really balloon up. He pretty much stays around 240 year round. Knowing that DC may come in to try and have a little bit of a weight advantage, in my opinion, just seems like Stipe, if nothing else, would just add a couple extra burgers to the routine, maybe put a couple extra pounds of solidarity on, but not really go too crazy. My eyes, I think DC is going to try and want to make a statement. So I'm guessing, this is my early prediction, I'm saying DC is going to come in about 245, 249. I think Stipe is going to come in about 256, 257.
See, I don't even think that's an issue at all because Stipe is always going to be the more fit of the two at this particular time. So
right.
Even if DC chuffs down some burgers and puts on some weight, it's only going to be a disadvantage for him. It comes down to the cardio, and Stipe has much better cardio to begin with. So just simply because he's younger too, and his line of work. Also, I'm going to be a fan of Stipe because, Ohio born and bred. So
OHIO, I get you.
Yeah. So I really think that it's going to be a really spectacular fight, honestly. I really think that Stipe is going to take it, but it really comes out. He's a lot more dedicated to his boxing. Like, he's one of the better boxers that you'll actually see in the UFC because he doesn't just, Superman punches, a lot of people disagree with me. That's the most ridiculous bullshit that I've ever seen. Like, I started out boxing, in my younger years. Fundamentals of boxing, understanding what a jab was and what to use it for. That is totally bereft in the UFC. Like, nobody uses a jab. There's obviously some cases, but nobody knows what a jab is for the most part. They just, if they're boxing, they're trying for the power punches. You've got your Muay Thai fighters that understand the fundamentals a lot better. But it's so frustrating watching sometimes just to see the horrific boxing. When Vitor came on the scene, he was just like plowing over everybody. A lot of people say that it was because he was juicing, but one of the biggest things is he had some of the most elite boxing skills ever, and people were just like, what's that?
Very true.
So I think Stipe takes it just simply because of his boxing skills.
Yeah, boxing and striking are two different things, and I was thinking that as soon as Meter passed me the notes, I started thinking like, man, that jab would be very good for Stipe to keep him off, because Cormier's game's going close.
Oh yeah, he's gonna get in on you.
Try. Yeah, so that jab is gonna be good, man. You'll definitely hear that in the corner if he's not throwing it.
Right.
You're jab.
DC has to get close. With that height disadvantage, he's definitely not going to have the reach. So he's going to have to get close. So that jab to keep him on the outside, perfect.
Yeah.
Right. And as I know Swag has been there for a couple of them, but sometimes when I'll do a live stream broadcast, my own fight companion-esque show, if you will, to the UFC events as they're live, one of the things that several of the regulars that come through will laugh when they hear me scream, and I will scream over and over till my voice goes hoarse. Watch the left jab. It's the least utilized, also least defended punch in the UFC today, because you see the few that utilize it will just break somebody's face throwing left jab after left jab that no one can defend, and then the rest of the UFC that just can't stop a basic jab to save their life.
Well, you also have to realize Stipe has a 9-inch reach advantage. 9 inches. I mean, that is you got to do some work to get inside of 9 inches.
Well, and one of the things that they were talking about on the road to the octagon is that John Jones actually has a 4 further inch reach than Stipe does. So DC knows that range to a point, but the difference is the way that they throw, in my opinion, whereas Jones stays long and uses his reach to his advantage, and Stipe almost uses it in the opposite way. He uses it as potential energy, and he throws short and steps through with his shot. So there's more pop and more power behind his shots, in my opinion.
Yep.
More linear. Yep. It's not hooking, it's more linear.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot more follow through with Stipe's, whereas Jones catches you at the end of his strikes. Stipe catches you about 50 to 60% of the way through and then follows that extra 40 to put some oomph on the end of it.
Yep. That's a striking thing, yeah.
That's because he's doing what you're supposed to. The idea is not to catch them at the end. It's to punch through them, not to hit them at the end of it. You want to punch through the other side of that guy's head. So the way he's striking is the proper way to do it, where you don't see a lot of guys doing that. They're out there catching them towards the end.
Very true. Very true. Which, to his credit, I will say, because I absolutely follow him on Instagram, John Jones has spent some serious time over the last couple months while he's had his downtime because of this latest shenanigans, and he is in his garage with his brother sweating it out at 100+ degrees for, good amounts of time, repeatedly just working on his boxing. And I tell you what, for a dude who could strike before, his shots are really, really looking crisp now. So when they finally get him back in, because much like McGregor, they're going to get him back in the octagon. So when they do get John back in the ring against somebody, his fists are going to be a little more dangerous than they used to be, I think. But I think this one, I think the evening is going to end with a Stipe arm raise.
That would be awesome. I would love to see Stipe win. I really would. I would really like to see him win. I think he deserves more credit than he gets. And I hear that a lot on like Joe Rogan and Brendan Schaub's. Like, he's just so marketable with the firefighter thing, and just,
I agree.
It just, and Cormier gets a lot of, he gets a lot of what Stipe should get.
Well, and I think part of that is that, as well as just being a humble dude like Stipe is, because he really doesn't play himself up. He always, like a true good champion, what he does, he says he represents from the team that put him there. But DC, on the other hand, he's almost like herpes, man. You just can't get rid of him. Every time you think you got a minute, you get to breathe, he pops up on Fox, UFC Tonight, or he's commentating for another show overseas, or they're letting him do a voiceover for a fucking clip on UFC.com, and you're like, just stop. Let me get just one without DC's intervention here. Whereas Stipe, unless he's fighting, generally you don't really get a whole lot of publicity from his side.
Yeah.
Well, Stipe is a good old boy kind of thing, I mean, well, I'll disagree, but, people call Ohio Midwestern, but I can get to the Atlantic Ocean quicker than I can the Mississippi. I don't necessarily think I'm Midwest, but, but, he's a good old boy. Cleveland's pretty big, but at the same time, Ohio's very rural. Like, it's just, he's wholesome, like, still works his job as a firefighter, humble to, like, more than anybody else. It's just, it's really strange. Like, they're really playing on it, and I think that's really good. And he's one of the most humble people in the UFC. I really truly believe. So I think that gets him a lot of standing as it is. So. Plus, he's just a really great athlete overall. So,
absolutely, that he very much is. Just in any capacity, and just in the general term of athlete, he really is a great example.
Yeah, he's humble until you tell him somebody's trying to take that belt. He's like, I'm walking out with my hand raised. This belt's
That's true. That's true. Also, I don't know if you guys followed this season of Ultimate Fighter with him and DC as coaches, but one of my favorite moments in the season was on the off days where Stipe and his crew would come in to train and DC and his crew weren't there. Stipe and some of his coaches held up or hung up rather with tape over the giant pictures that they have in the training room. Giant pictures of Stipe zoomed in with this horrific caterpillar of a pedo stash.
Yep.
And then over the main picture, the 5 foot by 7 foot picture on the main wall was a picture of Stipe and Gian Vellante photoshopped to look like they were naked with their dicks hanging out, high five.
Yep.
And the look on the guys' faces from DC's team as they came in and saw these pictures and that befuddlement, that puzzled look until they made it to the one with the dick out, and then just sheer, what the fuck? It that side of Stipe just makes you love him that much more, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a crazy part. And then Cormier coming in.
Right, yeah. And then, of course, DC walked right into Stipe's room and just pulled out the big boy and flashed him right in the face. Scarred poor Gian Vellante for life.
Yeah, that's what it's supposed to look like. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things that I've been saying, and even my wife was impressed because she knows how much I absolutely don't like John Speltholder. But watching this season of Ultimate Fighter, I really do. I will say that I've grown a new respect for him in terms of coaching, because that man generally gave an authentic shit about every member of his team and took a personal vested interest, even to the point where when it got to the coach's challenge at the end of the season, he told the guys right out the gate because he didn't remember, or at least played it like he didn't remember what the reward was. So when they told him, if you win, you get 10 grand and we each get 1,500, his immediate response without blinking an eye was, if we win, I will match whatever they're paying you. I will give you an additional 1,500 on top of what the UFC is giving you. And then when he did it, I will take my hat off to you, sir. That is not something that everyone generally does or thinks of, but he just seemingly instinctively went to, this is for the guys, not for me. I can respect that way more than I can him being John Speltholder.
Yeah, I like that part, and the part where he was where the one guy was being too rough with rolling with other guys.
Yeah, Thailand Clark.
And then he started talking shit, and he was like, all right, you know what? Let's go.
Yeah, Thailand Clark, when he was roughing the dudes up, the littler guys up too much, DC did step right in, and he's like, nah, bitch, no, I got this. You guys step back. Let me at a 205 guy put your ass at 155 around the way that you're doing to these 145 guys. Yeah, I agree. That was a good move on his part. Yeah,
let me just sit on top of you for a second.
Yeah, he did. He flattened that fucker out, held him down, and went, how do you like this? See, this is why you got to behave and, control your power. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, gentlemen, I believe that is all the time we are going to have for this episode. So I would like to first and foremost thank all three of you for coming out and for being a part of this with me. And hopefully I can get some of you guys back here in the future, because I plan on going at this. UFC is year round, so I don't see any reason why this couldn't be. Let's go around the room. I'll give you guys a chance real quick to tell everybody where they can find you again, and then we'll wrap this thing up. So Mr. Divine, why don't you go first?
I am n.divine83 on YouTube and Instagram. Man, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun. I would definitely come back whenever. This is awesome.
Absolutely.
I get to talk a lot of MMA with people that much. Hopefully it gets bigger and I'm able to. But, yeah, thanks for having me. And, yeah, n.divine83, Instagram, YouTube.
Absolutely. Much appreciated. Thank you again for being here, sir. Mr. Swaggy Shane, why don't you go next? Bueller.
Might step away for a second.
Okay, so TJ, why don't you go next while we page Swaggy Shane?
Well, since we're in his absence, you can find me on YouTube, GolfTeeVapes, as well as Instagram. However, I don't post much there, but either way, thanks for setting this up. This was a great time. I would gladly do it again. Definitely worthwhile. Definitely enjoyable to get everyone else's point of view. Glad to see that I'm on the same page as some people and then have a little skewed views on other things. It's always a good time.
Absolutely. Thank you again, brother. I do appreciate you coming along. And it looks like we might have retrieved old Swaggy Shane back here. Swaggy Shane, you want to tip us out here?
Yeah, that old mute button. I was talking, you just couldn't hear me. So, all right, so it was fun. I always like talking MMA with people that know what they're talking about. It's nice
Allegedly.
It's nice to have some opposing views and same views. But it was really fun, so I look forward to doing this again sometime. You can find me anywhere, any social media, Swaggy Shane or Vaping Swag. That's about it.
All right. Well, thank you again for coming along here, old Swaggy Shane. I do appreciate and each and every one of you guys for coming along and giving me your input and just giving me a sounding board to bounce some of my thoughts of, and to get some opposing views. And really, you guys, I will honestly say you've opened my eyes to a couple of new perspectives on some of the things that we've got coming up, and I'm very appreciative of that. So hopefully the listeners will be appreciative of the time that we've had together here. We are going to call that all for now. I do hope to get some more of these going up in the future. We are going to call that all for now, though. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, don't let ignorance stop you. You can root for anything. Have a great one. I'm No Joe. I would just like to take a second here to officially apologize to Derek Lewis. In the moment, I thought that he had a collegiate wrestling background. Upon reviewing my own bullshit, I have confirmed it was a football scholarship. He was at Kilgore College on, not wrestling. So I made a mistake. I'm human. It happens. It's going to happen more. But I'd just like to interject my my own correction there before somebody else beats me to the punch. Oh, oh, oh.